Welcome to History Crossroads, where past meets present, and every story reveals a new path through time.
Her story reads like a patchwork of impossible feats, stitched together with steely willpower and an uncanny ability to vanish into thin air when the odds were stacked against her. For decades, her name remained buried under layers of redacted files and forgotten medals. Yet her shadow lingers across history's quiet corners. She was more than a spy. She was a force, a rogue star in the intelligence constellation. What makes Krystyna Skarbek remarkable is not just that she risked her life repeatedly, but that she did so without demanding recognition. She fought battles in silence, not for glory, but for freedom, a word that carried real, personal weight for a woman whose homeland had been carved apart by invaders. Today, many remember the big names: Churchill, Roosevelt, de Gaulle. But what of the invisible hands that shaped key events? The operatives who gathered intel, sabotaged rail lines, and whispered coded phrases into trembling radios. Krystyna was one of those hands, elegant, unseen, but decisive. In many ways, she set the blueprint for the modern undercover agent. Adaptive, fluent, psychologically nimble. She understood that espionage wasn't about brute strength. It was about control, subtlety, and timing. Her presence unsettled the enemy because she embodied unpredictability, a ghost wrapped in silk and courage. This episode unpacks her legacy piece by piece, not to elevate myth, but to recover truth. To hear the rustle of her footsteps through war-torn cities, to feel the chill of mountain air slicing her cheeks as she carried freedom's message across borders. Let's return Krystyna Skarbek to the place she belongs, not in the shadows, but at the center of the spotlight she never asked for, yet undeniably earned. Her story reads like a patchwork of impossible feats, stitched together with steely willpower and an uncanny ability to vanish into thin air when the odds stacked against her. For decades, her name remained buried under layers of redacted files and forgotten medals. Yet her shadow lingers across history's quiet corners. She was more than a spy. She was a force, a rogue star in the intelligence constellation. What makes Krystyna Skarbek remarkable is not just that she risked her life repeatedly, but that she did so without demanding recognition. She fought battles in silence, not for glory, but for freedom, a word that carried real, personal weight for a woman whose homeland had been carved apart by invaders. Today, many remember the big names: Churchill, Roosevelt, de Gaulle. But what of the invisible hands that shaped key events? The operatives who gathered intel, sabotaged rail lines, and whispered coded phrases into trembling radios. Krystyna was one of those hands, elegant, unseen, but decisive. In many ways, she set the blueprint for the modern undercover agent. Adaptive, fluent, psychologically nimble. She understood that espionage wasn't about brute strength. It was about control, subtlety, and timing. Her presence unsettled the enemy because she embodied unpredictability, a ghost wrapped in silk and courage. This episode unpacks her legacy piece by piece, not to elevate myth, but to recover truth, to hear the rustle of her footsteps through war-torn cities, to feel the chill of mountain air slicing her cheeks as she carried freedom's message across borders. Let's return Krystyna Skarbek to the place she belongs, not in the shadows, but at the center of the spotlight she never asked for, yet undeniably earned. Imagine a woman, draped in a chic wool coat, striding confidently through a Gestapo prison in Nazi-occupied France. Her heels click sharply on the stone floor, echoing off the cold walls as guards eye her with suspicion. She smiles at them, calm as a lake in winter, speaks flawless German, and demands the release of two British agents. The guards blink, glance at one another, hesitate, and then open the gates. Her name, Krystyna Skarbek. She wasn't bluffing, she was deadly serious, and dangerously good at her game. This isn't fiction. This isn't Hollywood. This is the true story of the first female British special agent of World War II, and one of the most overlooked heroes of the 20th century. A woman whose courage, cunning, and charisma turned the tide of fate, one mission at a time. I'm Adam, and this is History Crossroads. Let's dive in. Born in 1915 in Warsaw to a Polish noble family, Krystyna Skarbek was a product of privilege and rebellion. Her mother, Countess Stefania, held tight to her aristocratic pride, while her father, Jerzy Skarbek, squandered the family fortune on gambling and grand living. Their wealth vanished, but Krystyna's fire only grew. Even as a child, Krystyna defied convention. She was wild, willful, and intensely curious. Her teachers often remarked she was more interested in exploring than in obeying. She rode horses like a cavalry officer and skied with the abandon of someone who felt invincible. Multilingual, politically aware, and blessed with a magnetic presence, she carved her own path through a world that wanted to tame her. She could charm a room and win a debate, but her real strength was her sense of independence. Krystyna wasn't content with the role society had written for her. She wanted more than tea parties and polite conversation. She wanted action, adventure, purpose, and when the storm clouds of war began to gather over Europe, she didn't retreat. She moved toward the thunder. By 1939, she was in Africa with her second husband, but when Nazi tanks rolled into Poland, Krystyna didn't hesitate. She left the safety of her new life behind and rushed to London, intent on doing something, anything, to stop Hitler's advance. She didn't wait for an invitation. She knocked on doors, pushed her way into meetings, and offered herself to British intelligence as a weapon in heels. She walked into the British Foreign Office like a woman on a mission. She told them she could ski, speak multiple languages, and blend into any European city. They looked at her with amusement, but also with interest. This was a woman who wasn't bluffing. She had the skill set and the audacity that covert work demanded. Krystyna joined British intelligence before the Special Operations Executive, the SOE, was fully formed. She became its first female agent. Elegant and persuasive, she made her case not with papers, but with passion. Her first assignments were audacious, crossing hostile borders to deliver messages, arms, and hope to the Polish resistance. In one mission, she disguised herself as a journalist and traveled through Hungary, braving freezing temperatures and enemy patrols. Her skis weren't just for sport, they became survival tools, slicing silently through the icy slopes of the Tatra Mountains. With forged documents tucked into her boots and coded reports stitched into her clothing, she passed checkpoints with a disarming smile and slipped into the shadows when danger drew near. She navigated a web of traitors, spies, and Nazi informants, often relying on split-second decisions and instinct. Her missions demanded improvisation. When a contact failed to show, she created a new plan. When a code was compromised, she found a way around it. Krystyna's ability to adapt made her invaluable. The men she worked with often underestimated her, until they saw her in action. She was calm under fire, fiercely intelligent, and driven by a loyalty to Poland and a hatred of tyranny. Her charm wasn't just personal, it was tactical. She could bluff her way into secure zones, sweet-talk collaborators, and disarm suspicion with a glance. In 1944, she pulled off one of her most daring feats. 2 British agents had been captured by the Gestapo in southern France. Most would have deemed a rescue impossible. Krystyna walked into the lion's den, a Gestapo prison, and calmly pretended to be a concerned relative. She made veiled threats. She implied terrible retaliation. She even hinted she was connected to powerful men. Her voice never shook. Her eyes never flinched, and it worked. The Gestapo released the agents. Her colleagues couldn't believe it. Neither could the Germans. It was a stunning example of psychological warfare, pulled off not with gadgets or guns, but with nerves of steel and a flair for the dramatic. That mission became the stuff of legend. Her fellow agents would tell the tale over drinks or whispered meetings. They called her fearless, unstoppable, a force of nature wrapped in silk scarves and steely resolve. But this wasn't her only close call. Earlier in her career, Krystyna had been arrested by the Gestapo in Hungary. Suspected of espionage, she was interrogated under brutal conditions. She knew her end was near, so she created an escape route with her own body. She bit her tongue so hard it bled, then coughed violently, faking the symptoms of tuberculosis. In an age of contagious fear, the guards panicked. No one wanted to catch the disease. Within days, she was released. It wasn't luck. It was calculated survival. Krystyna stayed one move ahead, always finding the pressure point to exploit, whether it was fear, ego, or bureaucracy. Her brilliance lay in knowing which weapon to use and when to use it. Sometimes that weapon was a lie, a look, or simply the illusion of power. But the war, for all its peril and purpose, eventually ended. And like many wartime heroes, Krystyna found herself adrift. Her name was not in the papers. There were no parades. Britain quietly dropped her from payroll. She was refused citizenship at first, like so many Polish exiles whose services had become inconvenient in peace. She took humble jobs in London, working as a shop assistant, a stewardess aboard cruise ships, and even as a telephone operator. To strangers, she was just another immigrant woman with an accent and a past no one cared to ask about. She never bragged. She never gloated. She simply carried on, quietly, her medals tucked away in drawers. She lived modestly, renting rooms and drifting between jobs, but inside, the fire still burned. She had walked into Nazi prisons. She had crossed mountain ranges in the dark. She had seen friends die. And yet, here she was, serving drinks to tourists who would never know her name. And then, in 1952, tragedy struck. Dennis Muldowney, a shipping clerk who had fallen in love with her and been rejected, followed her to a hotel in Kensington. There, in the street, he stabbed her to death. Her last words were said to be a whisper, "I'm dying." She was only 37 years old. Her funeral was modest. Most of her wartime comrades had scattered. The British government made no grand gesture. History, it seemed, was ready to move on. Before moving to her final resting place, it's worth pausing to reflect. How does a nation forget someone like Krystyna? But those who knew her couldn't forget. Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond, had met Krystyna through British intelligence circles. He admired her deeply. Many historians believe she inspired some of Bond's most iconic female characters. Cool, daring, and devastatingly competent. Vesper Lynd, Tatiana Romanova. Their DNA may very well trace back to the Polish Panther. Posthumously, Krystyna was awarded the George Medal, the Order of the British Empire, and France's Croix de Guerre. The medals were tucked into drawers. Her story drifted into the shadows. Shadows, after all, are where spies thrive, and where legends are born. Krystyna Skarbek didn't just break molds. She melted them down and recast them in her image. She proved that courage could be clever, not just loud, that a woman could wage war, not with bullets, but with brains and audacity, that a hero's worth isn't always measured in headlines, but in lives saved and enemies outsmarted, that loyalty to a cause can endure long after the world forgets your name, that history has many heroes and far too few heroines remembered. Thank you for listening to History Crossroads. If Krystyna's story moved you, hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and follow us on social media. Next time, we'll meet another hidden figure from the past whose courage rewrote history. And as always, stay curious, stay bold, and stay at the crossroads.